The needle hums close to my ear, soft, steady. A man speaks in low Khmer, and the translator leans in. This mark is for my father. It remembers his courage. The machine dips again, a tiny rain of crossed lines. Some stories choose the skin and stay there.
Hello, I'm Samnang Bradley. Welcome to Ancient Echoes KH. Ancient stones, modern stories, warm welcomes. Today we're sitting in a shaded studio in Phnom Penh, and later a village courtyard, listening to tattooists and the people who ask them to write memory on skin. We'll talk craft, care, and meaning. And I promise, no sacred formulas, no how-to instructions, only the human stories.
And I'm Sovin Linda. From the rasp of a hand-poked mark to the low buzz of a machine, these are living practices, passed down in families, changed by cities, and woven into daily life. Today, we'll meet an elder who learned traditional techniques, a younger artist balancing tradition and trend, and a clinician who helps keep practices safe. First, a little context. Tattooing in Khmer communities has many roles: memory, protection, identity, and sometimes simple aesthetic preference. But some designs are considered sacred or community restricted. We won't reproduce those. We'll explain cultural roles at a high level and point you to show notes for sources and recommended reading.
Historically, marks have been both personal and communal. Some are blessings, meant to carry protection. Others mark life passages, coming of age, marriage, a parent's remembrance. Skill is learned in apprenticeship, watching, tracing, and practicing under an elder's eye. Today, I'll tell you 3 short scenes: the elder artist, the apprentice, and a client who chose a mark to remember a parent. I sit in the elder's studio, the walls papered with old photos and faded sketches. He is quiet at first, wrinkled hands that still move with steadiness. He learned from his uncle, he tells me, when he was a boy. He learned by watching the way the elder held breath and needle together, by listening to the rhythm of stories between marks.
Tell me about that apprenticeship. How did people learn without formal schools? How did they carry on the meaning, not just the technique?
He smiles and speaks softly. The translator paraphrases. He says the work was daily life, helping at ceremonies, listening to elders, repairing rice baskets and tattoos in the same breath. Apprenticeship was about respect, how you approach a client's body, how you ask permission, how you hold the story they give you. He says, the mark is their story, not mine.
There's a careful humility in that. The mark is their story. It reminds us that the artist is a steward, not an owner. And you noticed signs of that stewardship in the studio?
Yes. The elder keeps a small notebook of client names, no images of sacred designs, and records when clients asked for prayers before a mark. He refused requests once, explaining certain motifs are community protected and can't be shared casually. He taught the apprentice to say no when something felt wrong. That refusal is itself part of the craft.
Fast forward to the apprentice, younger, tattooing with a modern machine on some days and hand-poking on others. They're navigating Instagram commissions and local traditions. What did the apprentice tell you about balancing old forms and new demands?
The apprentice laughed, a quick, bright sound, and said it's complicated. They love traditional motifs, but also design custom work, names and flowing Khmer script, floral patterns inspired by temple carvings, tiny images that travelers ask for. They talked about income realities. City clients can pay more, but the apprentice worries about losing meaning if everything becomes a trend. They described a careful conversation with each client, asking about why, who the mark is for, and whether certain designs should be left alone.
That idea of conversation keeps returning. asking before marking. It sounds like an ethical checklist: consent, story, and awareness of cultural limits.
Exactly. And I want to be clear, when clients talk about protection marks or spiritually charged designs, many artists will decline to reproduce specific sacred inscriptions unless there's community permission. We honored those boundaries while recording, and participants reviewed the episode notes before we published.
Now, for a quieter scene, a client in a village courtyard. She told us about the tattoo she chose after her father's passing. She described placing his favorite song and a small symbol he used to draw in the dust. When the needle started, she closed her eyes and hummed the opening line. The studio hum and her humming braided together, very intimate.
Listening to that, I felt how bodies become living archives. Skin keeps memory in a way photographs sometimes can't. But with permanence comes responsibility for the artist, the client, and the wider community.
Soundscape. Imagine the studio for a moment. Low machine buzz, the street beyond the door where a tuk-tuk idles, a kettle boiling somewhere, the soft folding of paper cups. These are the acoustic textures that sit under our conversation and give place to the stories.
We recorded a short mix: the hum, the city breathing, an exchange in Khmer where an elder reminds a young client to rest and drink water after the session. That pause, the aftercare, is often overlooked in romantic stories about tattoos, but clinically, it's vital.
Which brings us to expert reflection. We spoke with a local clinician who advises studios on sterile practice and aftercare. She emphasized 3 things: documented consent, single-use needles and proper disposal, and clear aftercare instructions. She also told us to look for visible hygiene practices, sealed needle packs, clean surfaces, and a willingness to explain the process.
From a cultural standpoint, a community custodian we consulted reminded us that some marks are not for sale. She explained that stewardship means asking, is this design tied to a lineage, a ritual, or a particular role? If so, it belongs to that community. Artists who care for cultural continuity will decline or redirect such requests.
So, practical takeaway. What should a listener who is curious do? First, ask questions. Why do you want this mark? Who does it belong to? Second, check the studio's hygiene: sealed needles, sterile setup, and clear aftercare. Third, respect sacred boundaries. Don't pressure an artist into restricted designs. And finally, compensate fairly. This is skilled craft and often a modest livelihood.
If you're visiting Cambodia and considering a tattoo, plan ahead. Read our show notes for recommended clinics and certified artists. Ask to see documentation, and if something feels off, walk away. Your body and the culture behind some images deserve care.
Before we close, I asked one artist what he'd like the listener to take away. He said, "Listen before you ask. The body speaks of stories. Ask, then carry that story with humility." That line stayed with me. Artists as listeners, clients as narrators.
We recorded many small moments that we couldn't fully include: private prayers, guarded motifs, hands tying cloth after a session. Those silences are part of the story too. Respect for privacy and permission is not a limitation, it's part of the craft.
Thank you for walking these rooms with us, listening to the hum, the stories that ask to be kept, and the careful hands that say no when needed. Bodies hold memory, and we are stewards of that memory when we listen well. If you enjoyed this episode of Ancient Echoes KH, please subscribe. Find full show notes, recommended clinics, and citations on our website. Follow us to keep Khmer voices and craft alive. Quiet stones, loud stories.